I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am, trying to make sense of what's probably one of the worst betrayals I've ever experienced. My name's Tom, and I was with my wife, Emily, for about 6 years. We had what I thought was a good marriage, fun, stability, plans for the future. Sure, she could be bitchy sometimes, especially when she was stressed or annoyed, but I always figured that was just her personality. She was sharp-tongued and quick to criticize, but I never suspected she was capable of something as disgusting as what I found out recently. It all started subtly. She'd been acting a little off for a while, less affectionate, secretive with her phone, quick to dismiss my questions about where she'd been or who she was talking to. I chalked it up to stress at work or maybe a midlife crisis or something. I mean, she's a manager at a marketing firm, so I figured she just had a lot on her plate. But then came the signs I couldn't ignore anymore. One night, I noticed her phone kept buzzing nonstop. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, screen lit up, with messages I didn't recognize. Normally, she'd just glance at her phone and put it down, but this time she kept checking it anxiously. When I asked her what was going on, she snapped, "It's just work stuff, Tom. Mind your own business." That was weird, but I didn't push it. I wanted to trust her. Then the next day, I noticed her getting ready in a hurry. She was throwing clothes into her bag, looking nervous. When I asked where she was going, she said she had to work late. She's done late nights before, so I didn't think much of it. But I did find it strange that she wouldn't let me come along or even tell me where she was going exactly. She insisted it was just business dinners and that I shouldn't worry. I did worry, though. That gut feeling was creeping in. A couple of days later, I started digging. I know, trust your spouse, right? But I just couldn't shake this feeling. I checked her email, her calendar, anything that could give me a clue. Nothing concrete until I remembered her mentioning a new project at work, one she seemed excited about. I was about to let it go, but then I noticed a pattern. She kept changing her plans, canceling dates with friends, claiming work was piling up. Okay, maybe she was just busy, I thought. But I also noticed a pattern of her being unusually evasive, telling little lies here and there. Then I remembered she'd also been talking about her boss, Richard. She'd be coming home late, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. It was always just sex. She'd snap when I asked, dismissing my concerns as jealousy or insecurity. But something didn't add up. Why was she hiding everything? Why was she so aggressive when I asked questions? And why did she get so defensive when I hinted I was starting to suspect her of cheating? It was weird how she'd turn on the bitchy attitude, that sharp edge in her voice, like I was the crazy one. What really broke the camel's back was a week ago. I came home unexpectedly early, something I rarely do. I wanted to surprise her, maybe take her out for dinner. When I got home, the house was quiet, too quiet. I checked our bedroom and her side of the closet was spotless, except for a single piece of silk blouse I'd never seen. I peeked into the bathroom and that's when I saw the lipstick smudge on her mirror, bright red, definitely not mine. My heart started pounding. I knew something was off. Then I saw her car outside, but no sign of her. I was about to leave and go back to my usual thinking. Maybe she was out with friends when I noticed the door to the guest room was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and froze. There she was, sitting on the bed with her phone, face lit up with a smirk I'd never seen before. I could hear her muffled voice through the door. She was talking to someone, and I caught snippets that made my stomach turn. "Don't worry, I got rid of him. He's clueless." That's when I realized she wasn't working late. She was sneaking around. I stepped back, my blood boiling, feeling like I'd been hit. My mind raced. Who was she with? What was she hiding? I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but I knew better. I needed a plan. I couldn't just accuse her without evidence. So I waited, watching her slip out of the house later that night, her heels clicking on the driveway. I followed her at a distance, and that's when I saw her entering a hotel, the same one where Richard was staying. That was the moment I knew for sure she was cheating. It wasn't just my paranoia or my insecurities. It was real, proven by her sneaking into that hotel like some cheating slut. I felt like my world was crashing down. All those years, all that trust, and she'd been lying right to my face. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. This betrayal cut deep. It's like she took what was supposed to be ours and threw it all away for a quick thrill with her boss. I don't know what's worse, finding out or knowing I have to confront her now. I'm stuck between rage, heartbreak, and a kind of numb disbelief. How do you come back from something like this? How do you look at her the same way again? I don't have the answers yet, but I know I can't just let her get away with it. Not without paying some kind of price. And trust me, I've got plans. Big ones. After I saw her walk into that hotel, everything inside me just shattered. I stood there in the dark, staring at that closed door like it was the gateway to my worst nightmare. My mind was racing, thoughts of all the times she told me she was working late, all those nights I stayed up waiting for her to come home, only to find her lying about the stupidest things. I felt sick. The betrayal was so raw I could taste it. It was like a punch to the gut every time I remembered her sneering at me or calling me insecure. She had lied to me about everything, about her work, her nights out, her supposed sex with Richard. All of it was a lie. I knew I had to keep my cool for now. I didn't want to blow everything up right then, but inside I was a storm. I took a deep breath and grabbed my phone. I knew I had to gather concrete proof before I said anything. I quickly turned on my camera, started recording, and snapped a few photos of the hotel entrance. I wasn't sure what I would do with them yet, but I wasn't going to let her get away without evidence. I also covertly started recording the noises coming from her phone when she was inside. I knew I needed proof, solid proof, for her to finally understand I wasn't some jealous fool. I waited outside for what felt like hours, my mind ping-ponging between fury and heartbreak. I kept telling myself I'd never be that guy who just takes betrayal lying down. No, I was going to confront her, but on my own terms. I had to be smart. I figured I'd find out everything first, who she was with, what they were doing, how deep this really was. I wanted to see her caught in her own lie face to face. It was about justice. I deserved that much. When she finally came out, I followed her at a distance again, pretending to be just a guy out for a walk. She got into her car and I saw her texting someone. The message popped up on her screen. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Don't forget the room key." I clenched my fists. That was it. That confirmed it. She'd been with him, Richard, no doubt. No working late. No business dinners. Just her sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face for months. I debated whether to confront her immediately or to wait until I had more proof. But as I watched her drive away, I knew I couldn't wait. I called a friend I trusted and asked him to come over. I needed witnesses, backup, someone to see what I'd uncovered. I also wanted someone to help me keep my cool when I finally confronted her. I was so angry I was afraid I'd lose control and do something I'd regret. Later that evening, I sat her down in the living room trying to keep my voice steady. I pulled out the photos from the hotel, the texts, the video recordings I had secretly made. I looked her in the eyes and I saw that bitchy smirk come back, the one she used to dismiss my concerns. "What's this about?" she said, feigning innocence like I was just some paranoid fool. I didn't even bother to argue. I just laid everything out. Her sneaking into the hotel, her lying about working late, her dismissive attitude when I questioned her. Her reaction. Oh, it was classic. She flipped out, called me crazy, said I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. She called me insecure and jealous, said I was just making a scene because I was hurt. She insisted she was innocent, that she loved me, but she had to do what she had to do, whatever that meant. She told me Richard was just a boss, a friend, nothing more. That it was just sex, an affair of convenience, nothing serious. But I knew better. I knew that was a lie. I could see it in her eyes. She enjoyed the power she had over me, the control she wielded. That whole night was a blur of emotion. I went from shock to anger, then to sadness. I couldn't believe I'd been blind for so long, trusting her, giving her my heart, only to find her screwing her boss behind my back. I felt like such a fool, like I had missed every warning sign. But what hurt most was the betrayal of her bitchy attitude, the way she dismissed my feelings and tried to turn it around on me. She was so good at lying, so cold and calculating. I wondered if I ever really knew her at all. I stayed up all night just staring at the ceiling, replaying everything I'd seen and heard. The pain was almost unbearable. I kept asking myself, how did I not see it? How could I have been so stupid? But then I realized it wasn't about my stupidity. It was about her deception, her sneaky game, and now I was left with a choice. Do I forgive her? Do I try to work through this? Or do I cut her loose and take back my life? Honestly, I didn't know what was worse, losing her or losing myself trying to fix what was broken. The next morning, I woke up with that heavy, hollow feeling in my chest, the kind that sticks around and refuses to go away no matter how much time passes. I'd spent the night tossing and turning, replaying everything, trying to find some shred of hope or justification in what I'd uncovered. But all I saw was her bitchy smirk, her lies, that sneaking into the hotel room like some cheap slut. I kept asking myself if I should confront her again, or if I should just pack her bags and kick her out. Honestly, I felt so betrayed I didn't know what was worse, her cheating or her lying about it. I decided I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. I needed more evidence, solid proof, before I made any final decisions. I told myself I'd gather everything I could, call the hotel, check her phone records, maybe even install some kind of hidden camera if I had to. I was furious and hurt, but I knew I had to be smart if I wanted to catch her red-handed again or expose her lies properly. I also reached out to my best friend, Mark, who's been through his own hell of a breakup. I needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge me, someone who understood what I was feeling. While I was trying to think through my next move, I remembered something important. Just a few weeks ago, she'd bought a new phone. That struck me as odd. She'd always been secretive about her new apps, her messages. I'd even caught her deleting things on her old phone, but I never thought it was serious enough to investigate further. Now, I realize it was all part of her cover-up. I knew I had to get into that phone somehow. I couldn't trust her anymore, not after tonight. I spent the rest of the day setting up a plan. I was going to go through her things when she wasn't home, find out exactly how deep she'd gone with Richard. I'd also secretly install a GPS tracker on her car, something I never thought I'd do, but I needed to know where she was when she disappeared for hours at a time. It was about protecting myself, about knowing the truth. I also started digging into hotel records, trying to find out if she'd booked another stay or if she'd been there more than once. All signs pointed to her being unfaithful, and I refused to let her keep lying and manipulating me. That night, I waited until she was out at some work dinner she'd claimed was supposed to be with her boss. In reality, I knew she was probably sneaking into Richard's hotel again. I slipped into her closet and grabbed her new phone. I managed to unlock it, thank God she hadn't set a complicated password, and started going through her messages, photos, anything I could find. I was shaking, angry, sick to my stomach, but I had to see the truth for myself. The messages were worse than I expected. She'd been texting Richard all day, calling him babe, saying things like "can't wait to see you tonight," and "I need you badly." There were photos of her in a hotel room bed, her legs spread, her lipstick smudged, looking completely turned on. It was like a punch in the face every time I scrolled. I couldn't believe how she'd lied to my face, told me she loved me when she was busy screwing her boss. That bitchy attitude she always had, snapping at me, calling me insecure, was just her hiding how much she enjoyed this secret life. I also found a folder labeled Richard with pictures, voice notes, and even a video of her blowing him in the hotel room. I felt physically ill just watching it, knowing that she'd been doing this behind my back, pretending everything was fine. The worst part, she had the nerve to act like she was the victim when I finally confront her. That she'd lie so effortlessly, call me crazy or jealous. But I had all the proof now, and I wasn't going to let her deny it anymore. When she finally came home the next morning, I was already waiting. I didn't want to give her the chance to deny or spin her lies. I wanted her to see I knew everything. I told her I had searched her phone, her emails, that I'd seen the explicit videos, the texts. Her face went pale for a second, then she started that bitchy smirk again. "You're insane, Tom. You're just jealous," she spat, trying to spin it around like I was the one at fault. But I wasn't buying it. I felt numb, disgusted, and furious all at once. I looked into her eyes and told her I wasn't going to tolerate her bullshit anymore, that she could lie all she wanted, but I had the evidence, and I was done. I told her I deserved better than her sneaking around and lying about her sex with Richard. I said I was done being the fool in this game, that I was going to leave her if she didn't come clean right then. Her bitchy attitude only intensified, but I didn't care anymore. I was done playing her game. That was the moment I decided I'd had enough. Enough of her lies, her manipulations, her betrayal. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. The confrontation that day was like a storm I couldn't control. I laid out everything, photos, videos, texts, everything I'd uncovered. Her face twisted into that bitchy smirk again, and she started turning her lies into accusations. "You're crazy, Tom," she snapped, voice dripping with contempt. "You're just insecure. Just because I had a little fun doesn't mean I don't love you. I was stressed. I needed a distraction." She spat out those words like they meant nothing, like she was trying to gaslight me into believing I was overreacting. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I stared her down and told her exactly what I thought, how I felt betrayed, humiliated, and disgusting. I said I couldn't believe I spent years trusting her, only for her to treat our marriage like some game she could cheat on and lie about. Her reaction: she rolled her eyes, scoffing at me. "Oh, please, Tom, you're such a drama queen. You think I'm the only one who's been unfaithful. Maybe I was just trying to spice things up. Maybe I just needed something different." Her words hit me like a slap. She was so bitchy, so dismissive, like I was the problem. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak, like my entire world was crumbling. I told her I wanted her to leave, to take her bags and get out of my house. I told her I never wanted to see her again, that I was done being her pawn in this sick game. She started crying, fake tears that only made me angrier. "You're overreacting," she sniffled. "You always do this. You jump to conclusions. You're just jealous because I still love you deep down." That's when I realized she was trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty, to make me doubt myself. But I couldn't let her do that anymore. I told her she could go, and I'd handle everything else. I said I'd call the police if I found any more evidence of her cheating, like if she tried to come back or spin a story to cover her ass. I wanted her out of my life, and I wanted her to know I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. As she stormed out, bitching and shouting about how I was overreacting, I watched her walk away with that smug attitude, confident she'd somehow won. But I knew better. I knew I'd just taken the first step. The emotional roller coaster was still going, and I felt like I was on the edge of a breakdown. I was hurt, furious, and utterly exhausted. The trust I had in her was gone, and I was left picking up the pieces of what was supposed to be a life built on love. That night I stayed awake again, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. I kept asking myself how I could be so blind, how I let her manipulate me for so long. I felt betrayed not just by her cheating, but by her attitude, how she dismissed my feelings, how she lied so effortlessly, like I was just some fool she could walk over. I knew I had to move on, but I didn't know how. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I had to decide whether to fight for myself or let her walk away with my heart and my dignity. I could see the path clearly now. One way led to heartbreak, the other to getting my life back. But I was terrified of what choosing the latter would mean. The days that followed were a blur of emotional chaos. I stayed in my house, trying to keep it together, but honestly, I felt like I was losing my mind. Every time I saw her things still in the house, I felt a surge of rage. Every memory we made, every laugh we shared, now just a reminder of how badly I'd been played. I started thinking about what I'd do next, whether I'd fight to save the marriage or just cut my losses and move on. Part of me desperately wanted to believe she'd come crawling back, begging for forgiveness, admitting everything was a mistake. But deep down, I knew that was a fantasy. She was too bitchy, too manipulative. Her pride wouldn't let her admit she was wrong. Plus, every time I caught her in a lie, my respect for her just kept plummeting. I'd never seen her like this, so cold, so ruthless when she was caught. It was like I was dealing with a completely different person. I also knew I had to protect myself legally and financially. I started researching what steps to take if I decided to divorce. I reached out to a lawyer, got some advice, and started gathering all the evidence I had: screenshots, videos, her texts, everything I could use if it came down to that. I didn't want to be blindsided if she tried to spin some story to save herself. I also changed all my passwords, put a lock on my bank accounts, and even got a new phone. I felt like I was going into battle and I couldn't afford to be caught off guard. But honestly, the hardest part was the emotional toll. I kept replaying that night in my head, her sneaking into the hotel, her smirk, her words, the videos I'd seen. It made me question everything about us. How could I have missed so many signs? How could I have trusted her for so long? I felt so stupid, so betrayed. I thought about her bitchy attitude, the way she'd dismiss my concerns, call me insecure, like she was just waiting for the right moment to stab me in the back. I felt so alone. My friends tried to comfort me, but they didn't really understand the depth of what I was going through. It's one thing to hear about betrayal, but it's another thing entirely to live it. I kept asking myself if I should try to fix things, or if I should just cut her loose, bolt the door, and never look back. Part of me still wanted to believe it could work out, that maybe she'd realize her mistake and come back. But another part knew, deep down, that she was the kind of person who would do this again if given the chance. That realization hit me hard. I couldn't keep living in limbo. Either I fight for myself and move on, or I stay and accept that I was just some fool who got played. One thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I'd made the decision that if she ever tried to come back, I'd be ready. Ready to confront her, to tell her off, to make her see that I was done being her punching bag. So I started planning my next move. I was going to talk to my lawyer about how to protect my assets, how to file for divorce if I decided to go that route. I also wanted to get a firm grasp on my own mental health, maybe see a counselor, get some perspective. I was tired of feeling like I was drowning in this mess. I knew I had to find a way out, not just for myself but for my sanity. Because if I stayed any longer, I feared I'd lose who I was completely. And honestly, I deserved better than a wife who'd call me insecure and callously destroy what we built. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't terrified about what the future held. But one thing was for sure, I was done letting her treat me like I was nothing. In the end, I made my decision. I filed for divorce a couple of weeks after everything came to a head. It wasn't easy, far from it. There were days when I doubted myself, wondered if I was overreacting, or if I'd lose everything I'd worked so hard for. But then I remembered her bitchy attitude, the way she dismissed my feelings, and how she lied so effortlessly. I knew I couldn't stay in that toxic environment, not anymore. The divorce process wasn't smooth, of course. She fought me on everything, trying to spin the story that I was the crazy one, that she was the innocent victim. But I had the evidence, photos, videos, texts, and I made sure it was all in the court's hands. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just some fool who got played. I was a man who knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of it this time. Getting through the aftermath was a rough ride. I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. Relief that I finally got out of that toxic mess, and heartbreak for what we'd lost, years of trust, the future we'd planned, the life I thought was real. But I also felt a strange sense of empowerment, like I was finally reclaiming myself. I started focusing on me, working out, seeing friends, and going back to things I'd put aside during the chaos. Looking back, I realize how much I learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that I have strength I never knew I had. That bitchy attitude she used to dismiss me with, it was her insecurities, her way of hiding how much she was afraid of losing control. I see now that sometimes you have to cut your losses and walk away, no matter how much it hurts. To anyone out there in a similar situation, if you're catching signs of betrayal, don't ignore them. Don't let anyone manipulate or gaslight you into thinking it's your fault. Trust your gut. Gather evidence. Protect yourself legally and emotionally. Because at the end of the day, you deserve honesty, respect, and someone who values you, not someone who sneaks around, calls you insecure, and then acts like they're the victim. I'm still healing. Some nights are tough and I still get flashes of anger or sadness. But I'm moving forward. I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting her. It's about reclaiming my peace and dignity. I want to believe I'll find someone who respects me, who's honest and kind. But for now, I'm just glad I finally took control of my life. And honestly, that's enough.